I'm Ric Edelman. On today's show, buying a car and some of the worst mistakes investors make. We'll also talk with Don Blandin of the Investor Protection Trust. All that and more on this edition of The Truth About Money.
Best-selling author and founder of one of the nation's largest financial planning firms, Ric Edelman.
There aren't too many feelings better than the rush you get when you take that first ride in a brand new car. But there's one new car that you might not have considered buying. So I sent my colleague, Keith Spengel, to go talk to Gil Hofheimer. He sells, well, you'll see.
Wow, what are we looking at here, Gil?
This is a 2011 Phantom four-door sedan. One of the unique features is the self-leveling center hubs.
So no matter what, when the tire is going around, the RR is always straight.
It's always level with the road. This is retractable. It serves as a picnic table, as well as a video screen.
It's a monitor?
If you touch the button right up here.
Oh, okay. This is 12 cylinders.
This is our V12, and it's powerful enough to do whatever you want.
Why is this the best of the best?
Well, this is a very deep in heritage. It is hand-built. It takes about 4 weeks to build one. This car is $411,000.
$411,000. I think I need to talk to Rick. I love the look on this four-door here, but if I wanted to have a little bit of wind in my hair, do you have something else you could show me here?
I certainly do. You want to walk to the back of the show?
Let's take a look.
This is our 100th anniversary Spirit of Ecstasy edition.
Spirit of Ecstasy, Rolls-Royce.
This is a very unique car in that they only built 100 for the world, brought 40 to the United States, and only 5 convertibles. This brings new meaning to the term tailgating.
Do you get a lot of Rolls-Royce tailgating fans?
We do, as a matter of fact.
What price tag are we looking at? We're talking about 5, 6 of these in the United States total.
You can buy this for $492,000. If you take a car like this that they've only produced 100 for the world,
right.
In 10 years, that car will be worth probably $1 million.
Rick, Gil said it looks good on me, so don't worry. I put it on the company card. Let's go, Gil.
Welcome back to the show, Keith.
Thanks, Rick.
So it's astonishing that you're going to see somebody writing a check for $300,000 or $400,000 to buy a vehicle like this. But what about the ongoing ownership costs? I mean, is it also incredibly more expensive to own one and maintain one compared to, say, a Toyota?
Well, no. See, that's exactly what I found out. The very next day, I called my auto insurance agent, who's been my agent since I was a teenager. I called Tracy, and I said, look, yesterday I was at a Rolls-Royce and a Bentley dealership, and she said, oh, no. What did you do wrong? I said, no. I just wanted to find out how much would it be for me to insure a vehicle like this. And with a clean driving record, my age range and so forth, it was really quite inexpensive. The Bentley, which was about $290,000, we were looking at around $700 every 6 months. And on the Rolls-Royce Phantom, about $1,500 every 6 months.
And that shocks a lot of folks who are surprised to hear that it's so inexpensive to insure these cars. Well, let's face it, these owners tend not to drive them a lot. They don't drive them into bad neighborhoods and leave them unattended, and they don't take them to the supermarket where they're going to get banged up by a shopping cart.
Yeah, they're not being taken on their regular road trip or being left in the football parking lot for a tailgate.
And I doubt the family dog will be in the back seat. But you were in the back seat, and that means you omitted the #1 expense that you didn't take into consideration.
What's that?
The cost of the chauffeur.
Oh, see, I was figuring it was the company car and you'd be driving it.
You'd still need the cost of a chauffeur. We'll see you next time.
Ever wondered why your paycheck is called a salary? We'll have the answer right after this next segment.
At a recent conference, investment advisors were asked just one question. What is the biggest mistake investors make?
The biggest mistake that investors make is that they follow their emotions instead of the logic.
I think the biggest mistake is that they are not cautious enough. The danger in investing, particularly in the stock market, is in many instances for real. You can make a lot of money over time, but time is on your side. It is not something, in our opinion, that needs to be done in the short term. You need time.
I would say universally, it's trying to time the market. Too many people try to time the market and they end up missing out on one side or the other.
I see investors making mistakes by following the crowd too often.
Sticking their head in the sand and not paying attention to their goals.
Ever wondered why your paycheck is called a salary? The reason goes back to the times of ancient Rome. Soldiers were often paid in salt, which was rare and valuable. The Latin word for salt is salarium. Over time, this became our word, salary.
Let's head off to Arlington. Maurice is on the program. Welcome to the show, Maurice.
Question for you. I've read numerous times that many people think that 30-year bull market in bonds is over. Wanted to know if you think that is true, number one. Number two, if that is true, are you guys altering your portfolios, diversification, so to speak?
Good question. Is the 30-year bull market in bonds over, and if so, are we altering our allocation? The answer is yes and yes. Answer the first yes. Is the 30-year bull market in bonds over, Anderson?
Well, it would have to be, given the fact that interest rates from 1980 were at their highest point, and now they're at their lowest point. They can't go any lower than zero.
But why does that make any difference?
Well, because as soon as interest rates begin to rise, the value of those bonds will begin to fall.
Why?
Because there's an inverse relationship to interest rates to bond values. If I buy a 30-year bond today, and that 30-year bond is paying 3%, next year, the new bonds come out, they're 5%. People aren't going to want my 3% bond. They're going to want the new bond that's paying 5%. So they're not going to pay me full price for my 3% bond. So therefore, I'm going to see the value of my bond go down dramatically based on how high interest rates go up.
Most people don't understand this, Maurice, and that's why I'm really glad you're raising the issue. Interest rates and bond prices are on opposite ends of a seesaw. And I'm really glad, Anderson, that you've explained it the way you did. As interest rates change, so do the value of bonds, but in the opposite direction, that inverse relationship. As interest rates go down, bond prices go up. And over the last 30 years, that's what we've seen. Interest rates, remember 1980, interest rates were 15%. They've gone down to zero, and therefore bond prices have gone up dramatically over the past 3 years. But now that interest rates are at zero, Maurice, I'll ask you, what are interest rates going to do over the next 10 years?
Oh, I think they're going to skyrocket sooner or later.
If interest rates go up, that means that bond prices will go down. And here's the ratio. People don't understand this mathematics. 1 in 7. For every 1% increase in interest rates, there will be a 7% decrease in bond prices. Meaning if interest rates go up 3%, bond prices will fall 21. This is not a prediction. This is mathematical fact. We're only unsure as to when this will happen. How soon will it be before interest rates begin to go up? How fast will they go up? How high will they go? But when they do, for every 1% increase, bonds will fall 7%. And this is the fear we have. Well, let's go to the second half of your question. Given that, Brandon, what are we doing with our allocations for our clients?
What you don't do is ignore bonds completely, because the alternative is to load up 100% in stocks. So what we're doing to adjust our client portfolios is you shorten the maturity of the bonds. Because think back to Anderson's example. If you buy a 3% bond and interest rates rise, and next year the interest rate's 5%, your bond is less valuable. But if it matures that year, guess what? You get to reinvest at the higher rates, as opposed to if you bought a bond that matured in 30 years. You've got to wait 30 years of owning this investment that's down in value. So you shorten the duration.
Meaning the longer the maturity of the bond, the greater the risk. A 30-day bond, known as a treasury bill, or a 30-day CD, these have much lower interest rate risk than 30-year paper. 30-day paper is safe, 30-year paper is risky. So we're buying predominantly for our clients 3-year, 5-year maturities, maybe a little bit of 7s, but we're not doing hardly any of 30-year paper because of the risk associated with that. So yes, maintain your bond exposure, just shorten the maturities and the durations, and that's how you'll protect yourself, Maurice.
Okay, really helpful, guys. Thanks.
Like the tax thing for 2 years, what was Barack Obama saying? I will not raise taxes on the middle class. I will raise taxes on the rich. The rich can afford it. They will pay the deficit. The Republicans took over Congress. They were like, come here, young Obama. You will not raise taxes on the rich. And he was like, I will not raise taxes on the rich. These are not the tax increases you were looking for. These aren't the tax increases I was looking for.
Hi, Rick. I want to know, are student loans worth it?
Yes, student loans are worth it. I'm not worried about the student loan. What I'm worried about is something much more important, and that's the cost of the school that you've chosen to go to. Let's face it, if you're going to spend $50,000 a year, which is what the highest priced schools cost, we're talking about $200,000 plus for a college education at these institutions, and you're going to emerge with a degree as a school teacher, that is a terrible decision, because we all know that school teachers, as valuable as they are, don't command large salaries. So you have to make sure that you're paying for an education that is going to deliver an ROI, return on investment. If you're going to come out of school with $100,000 in debt, you had better be entering a career that can generate enough income to make that debt worthwhile. So engineering, the sciences, law, medicine, business, okay, I can handle a $100,000 debt in that scenario. But if you're going to come out with a history degree, with a liberal arts education, school teacher, or other profession that is simply not known for high salaries, you had darn well better minimize your student loans. And you do that by choosing a school that, frankly, doesn't cost a lot. That means you should look at community college for the first 2 years. Dirt cheap and great educations. And if you're thinking that graduate school is in your future, you had darn well better spend the last 2 years of your undergrad degree at an in-state school that is very inexpensive. Save the big bucks, the big expense for that graduate program.
Rick, I just came into some money from an estate settlement and from some insurance benefits. I've also refinanced my home, and I'm getting $700 back, into my payment for that. I'm going to pay off my bills. That's going to create another $1,300 coming back to me, so I'm going to have $2,000 more a month. Now, a couple years ago, I became ill, and my credit took a hit because I, fell behind in my payments. So now I've been working on that, and my credit score has been coming up. Now I want to buy an automobile, and my concern is that if the rate is high, do I go ahead and pay cash for the car? Do I take that money, take the hit for a year with the high interest rate, if it comes to that? Pay that off, or pay it for a year, refinance the car after that, or take the other money and invest it right now.
What are you doing for transportation now?
I have a car.
And is it okay? Is it acceptable?
No, it's starting to have problems, electrical problems.
So how much do you think it would take to fix the car?
It's all paid off, so I don't know.
So, see, here's what I'm worried about, is that if you didn't run into this sudden money, you would keep the car you've got and you'd muddle through with it. I want to make sure that we're not
being frivolous with the newfound cash that you've got, because as you pointed out, you've gone through a period of difficulty economically, and now you've got a newfound $2,000 a month, which is fabulous. And I'd love to see you save as much of that as we possibly could. So instead of buying a new car for $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, when the repairs on the existing car might only be $3,000 or $4,000, I want you to seriously consider the idea of keeping the existing automobile. But that advice, as logical and pragmatic and level-headed as it is advice nobody ever follows because it's too much fun to buy a new car, as Gene can attest with me. I just, it's, who cares? Let's just buy a new car. So we all know we're supposed to buy a used car and keep it forever, and nobody does. Some people do, or at least they claim to. But so if I can't convince you to keep your old car or to go ahead and buy a used car and keep it for 10 plus years, then what we need to do is figure out how to buy that new car as inexpensively as possible. And that means to pay cash if we can't get an interest rate that is acceptable. So because your credit record has some dings on it, you might find yourself paying 10, 12, 14% for an auto loan. So we need to shop around. You need to go to the dealer and see what the dealer will offer you. Many automobile manufacturers are offering very aggressive deals because of the sluggish economy that you might find yourself being able to get very good financing on the car. Second, if that doesn't work with the dealer, talk to your local lender. Go to your local bank where you have accounts established. Talk to a credit union, which offers, in many cases, very good loans at lower rates than commercial banks. Or go to a local community bank as opposed to one of the big national banking institutions, and see what they will offer you in the way of financing. But if the financing is high, and I'm going to put that number at 8% or higher, then pay cash for the car. And if you don't have the cash yet to afford it, keep saving that $2,000 a month until you do. Okay. That's simple.
Everything is so expensive. You got to make money in this economy. You got to make money. My grandmother is in a nursing home down in Chesapeake, Virginia. It's $4,000 a month for her to stay there. I can't afford to keep her there. So I was trying to think of a place where she could be cared for that wasn't so expensive. And I remembered my grandmother ran a house cleaning service for 25 years. And she never paid taxes on the money that she earned. So I called up the IRS. And I reported her for income tax evasion. And then I called her up, I said, Grandma, I found another place where you're gonna be staying.
You've all heard that cheer that begins 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1. Why is a quarter sometimes referred to as 2 bits? The answer is coming right up.
When the bad boys of Wall Street get fined by federal regulators, what do those government agencies do with that money? A lot of it goes to the Investor Protection Trust, an organization designed to help consumers stay away from those bad boys of Wall Street. With us today is Don Blandin, the president and CEO of the Investor Protection Trust. Don, thanks for being with us.
Hi, Rick. Good to see you.
You as always. You would think that it would be a goal to put you out of business, meaning that nobody's getting fined, and therefore there's no money collected to fund you. Yeah. But I guess that's not likely.
Well, my wish is that we were out of business, which means that people were losing their life savings to scam artists and other products that just weren't suitable for them.
Now, the IPT has been around for the last 7, 8, 9 years. What trend do you see? Are we finding that the wrongdoing on Wall Street is stable, ebbing, getting worse?
Actually, we're seeing it on the incline. It's increasing. The folks are calling in more and more saying that they feel that they've been exploited financially in some way. And with the baby boomers turning roughly 10,000 a day for the next 18 years, turning 65, they will have a majority of the personal wealth in this country. and people without money will be going after them in ways that are not suitable.
So I want to turn that on its ear a little bit, Don, and talk about you. You're one of the experts in protecting yourself from crooks and frauds. You are immersed in the personal finance field and the investment world. What do you do personally with your money? How do you handle it? Have you shoved it all under a mattress, afraid that someone will run off with it? Or how do you handle your money?
Not at all, Rick. My wife and I, we've been married almost 40 years, and we had decided from our early 20s that we wanted to be in positions where we were helping people, which are typically an educational institution, nonprofit organizations. And so we realized that we were never going to make the big bucks. So we had to learn early how to put enough money aside for our future. And the only way to do that was to learn about investing. And thank goodness I had a good mentor in my 20s who explained to me the difference between stocks and bonds. I can walk out on the street and just ask about anybody, what's the difference between a stock and a bond? And I get a blank stare, you know, about mutual funds, about dollar cost averaging, about how compound interest works, all those basics of saving and investing, the process of investing before going out and buying products. Some of us have gone out and just bought products we totally didn't understand. So what we've done is we have worked as a team with our whole family and extended family to figure out what money we made, how do we grow it over a long period of time, through good and bad times. And even through bad times, there are some good opportunities.
So would you say that today, looking back over your career, if you've been investing since you're in your 20s and 30s, would you say that today is as good an opportunity, not as good an opportunity? What would you say to folks who are looking at facing their own situation of the choice of whether or not to invest?
Well, if you started early and you learned about investing, you were probably still in pretty good shape now. You didn't take realized losses, make unrealized losses realized losses. You didn't sell everything at its lowest point. You say this all the time. You know, you buy low and sell high. A lot of people do the opposite, unfortunately. So you have to understand enough about investing. However, unless you have the money to do it on a day-to-day basis, you'll probably want to get help. And that's what I recommend is find somebody you can trust, interview some financial planners, figure out what you can afford, what your risk tolerance is, and learn how to manage your money to give you financial security later on.
Thanks, Don, for being with me today.
Thank you, Rick.
We have more with our interview of Don Blandin at the Investor Protection Trust. It's available at our website, thetruthaboutmoneytv.com.
Why is a quarter sometimes referred to as 2 bits? Many old coins, like the Spanish pieces of 8s, could be broken into 8 pieces. Each piece was called a bit. If you broke a dollar into bits, 2 of them would be a quarter of the whole dollar, or 25 cents.
Before we go, we saw today the history and heritage of Rolls-Royce, that Roman soldiers were paid in salt, and history's source of the phrase 2 bits. But history can only tell us so much, and investing based on past performance is dangerous. Equally important, don't let your regrets of the past stop you from doing what you need to do today. Instead of lamenting that you didn't start saving years ago, just start now. It's not too late. And that's the truth about money. I'm Ric Edelman. See you next week.